Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? I thought of a cool video. I wanted to give you a little bit of history, my work history. I used to work at Target, and I worked for the tech department. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. As you know, I love video games, and the tech department, you would help the customers because I don't work for Target anymore. I could say that. Um, you either have the book department, the DVDs, the Blu-rays, or the video games and the laptops and the TVs. Oh, the TVs are a nightmare. Regular size TVs are fine, but when you need assistance for, bigger TVs that are heavier, but no one's coming to help you, that's a pain. um, One thing I could say that I think Target, doesn't make any sense. You go to different locations, but it has the same stuff. At least with GameStop, it's going to have different games based off of people trading in games. Sometimes I wonder why Target doesn't have a trade-in system and then just sell games at a discounted price that are used like Best Buy used to. I'm not sure if Best Buy does that anymore, but they used to back in the day. Why am I gonna go to one Target and then go to another location Target, but you have the same exact games? That doesn't make sense to me. The other thing is the prices. The prices are higher than other stores. So don't buy it at Target. Go to Walmart. You can save $20 instead of paying full price at Target. One thing, that was really annoying is somebody would call in and they'd want to know if a product is in stock. Well, it goes two ways. Either the system says it is in stock and it's actually not, and then that inconvenience the customer because they're going to come out of their way to get this item and then it's not even here. One cool trick, I don't know if they do this anymore, but let's say if you wanted the PS5 or the Xbox Series X, people would say, hey, I was wondering, I noticed that you don't have it in stock. We have something called a Zebra. That's the device that you see. Well, not anymore, actually. Everybody used to have a Zebra, the device that they use at Target. Eventually, people were lucky to get radios. um, the Zebra has every single store and what's in stock. So it used to be really cool to say, "Hey, I'm sorry it's not here, but you know what? There is something in stock that it says. Sometimes it says it's in stock when it's not really in stock." Um, and then they go, "Hey, thanks, I appreciate that," and then go to the other location. Well, the problem with that is you can guess it, scalpers. I can't tell you how many times they would abuse the system, I guess you'd say. I don't know what you want to say, but the only reason why they wanted to know if that product was in stock at the other store was just to scalp it. I don't know about you, but I don't like scalpers. The whole reason why I didn't get a PS5 until last Christmas is because of scalpers. It wasn't because I couldn't afford a PS5. It was because the scalpers used bots, and the bots took up all the stock for the PS5. So I really loved working at Target. Isn't that funny? What do you think happened? I was doing what I loved. I knew all about video games. I knew about technology. I knew about, um, all these different things. And I was happy. Well, eventually, people got mad at me for me being happy. They were mad I wasn't miserable doing the job. And you know why? because I knew my stuff. I knew that if you got a Oculus Quest, that you can't upgrade the storage if you want. So it's probably better to get the biggest storage possible, even though it's $100 more. I knew that even the OLED Steam Deck only had like 58 gigs internal storage. And I would tell the customers, hey, I think you might want to get a micro SD to expand your storage. I'm a good salesman. I can make people decide if they want to buy something. Do you know why? Because I'm sincere. I don't have an ulterior motive. I'm not a scummy company that seem to be con artists now, Nintendo. There was no reason why you couldn't tell the price, during the direct of the system and the games. You either were being deceptive, or you took us for fools, or you thought, they're going to buy it anyway, so who cares? But anyway, with Target, right? They demoted me. They didn't tell me I was demoted, but when you get hired for a certain position, which is the tech department, there's no reason why I should be a regular cashier. So they demoted me. Because one thing I could tell you about the tech department, you didn't just have to deal with the customers with the tech. You also had to push product. You also had to pull product. If you just had one employee doing all the tech for the whole day, it would go a lot smoother. But no, you got to have a radio, and then they call you. Oh, there's somebody for tech department while you're trying to pull or push or whatever. And then they get mad at you for not being available when you're making us do 3,000 different jobs. That's one thing I can tell you about Target. They don't anymore. They had the self-checkout, the drive up, and what's the third one? Oh yeah, cashier. They expected you to do self-checkout and cashier at the same time. And if you couldn't do self-checkout or cashier, you had to do drive up. Then drive up's insane because you're timed. Well, not everybody uses the app to know when you're coming to the store to pick up your items. They don't know how to do that. So sometimes people will arrive and then it confirms that they arrived, and then they expect you to get that thing done. Oh, Jaleesa. And then they expect you to get it done in a certain time. You can't control how many people are coming at the same time, and you're getting penalized for it. How does that make any sense? No, what you need to do is have two people. You need to have one for drive up and one for customers inside, because there's pickups that you have to do too. Basically, the customer would come and then you go into the back room and you would give them their, online transactions, basically. That was another thing. The PS5, for the longest time, you couldn't just go to the store, and I'm talking about Target because I work at Target. That's what this video is about, Target. You couldn't go to the store and just pick up a PS5 over the table. You had to order it online, and then you could buy it. You couldn't just go to the store and just buy the system. Anyone that shops at Target should shop at Walmart, because even Walmart said, shop smarter and save more. Target is expensive for no reason. You're not paying anything special. Anyway, the cool thing was, even as a cashier, I still was in undercover tech department. So they didn't stop me completely from doing the job I love. But eventually they messed me over because I was on demand and they laid off all the on demand workers, and I was one of them. They never told me that I was laid off. I had to call the customer service, uh, you know, number or whatever, CSE or whatever. I don't remember the acronym. But anyway, and I say, hey, what's going on? I can't sign into my app to see my schedule. And they're like, oh, we laid you off because we laid off every on-demand worker. And I said, okay, and you guys weren't gonna, send something in the mail. You weren't gonna tell me anything. They hired me for tech department. So why, when tech department needed people, didn't I get my job back? Why would you hire new people to do tech department if you hired me for tech department? That makes no sense. Another thing at Target, they don't like to train. They just put you and you have to learn it yourself, and hopefully you learn it quick. Then they get mad at you for not knowing certain things when they don't train you properly. How does that make any sense? My dream job is GameStop or some video game store. I would love to help out customers with their purchases of video games because I know everything about video games. Even my psychologist told me that I'm a genius when it comes to video games. He said I probably know 90% more than this whole population on Earth about video games because I was grown up and raised 9 years old with video games. So I wonder why I know so much about video games and have so many video games. He said I am the video game expert because he said his son wanted the Switch 2. And then he asked me, what do you think about the Switch 2? And I told him, don't buy it. I said, it is not as good as they're making it look. It doesn't matter if it has 120 frame rates per second because not all developers are going to utilize that. Like I said, paying more for less. Because what's going to happen is people are going to buy the $80 games, and if the games suck, you just paid for a game that's not even worth it. You really think that people are just going to keep buying games at $80? No, they're going to say, well, that game sucks, so I'm not buying the next game that comes out for $80, no matter if they think that it's worth it or not. Because in the end of the day, it's the customers. The customers decide if something is worth it or not Nintendo variable pricing. The customers decide. No, that's the good news. So yes, I know for sure people are going to buy the Switch 2. I know for sure I'm not. I'm boycotting the Switch 2. I can't boycott Nintendo because I do have the Switch 1 and I want to buy Metroid Prime 4 because of how many years I've waited for it. I'd be a fool not to buy Metroid Prime 4. And yes, I know it's not going to perform as good as the Switch 2. But I have other Switch 1 games I want for my collection too. I'm a physical collector. I hate digital. I don't like digital because I feel that you're borrowing their software when you agree to the terms of service. And that's how they say, oh, well, we actually own it. You don't own anything. We were just letting you use it for the time being. There should be laws against this. Nintendo, Sony, even Xbox shouldn't be allowed to say, And that's a good point too. Xbox is not good either, because I'll buy Xbox games like Mercenaries, right? But because I don't have the online membership, I can't even play the Xbox game if I'm not signed in to Xbox. I can't even save my games. At least with the Xbox 360, you had a hard drive. It didn't matter if you were signed into your subscription, Xbox Live or not. They literally don't let you save your games if you can't sign into your account. I think that's insane. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have 10 Switches. Am I really gonna stop buying Switch games just because I don't want to buy Nintendo's newest system? All I'm doing is hurting myself if I do that. I told you I'm a collector, so obviously I want to have a collection of Switch 1 games. I told you I'm not buying the Switch 2, and I'm not buying the enhanced editions. I'm not buying the game key cards. You know the game key cards are a scam, right? Because once the eShop store shuts down, those game key cards are going to be useless. And I think GameStop and other stores shouldn't even take trade-ins for the game key cards. I actually messaged GameStop and I said, dude, you're getting scammed even by Nintendo. Because think about it. They shut down the Wii U, and 3DS eShops, right? The 3DS games were $40 a piece. That's not cheap. I wouldn't be surprised if they shut down the Switch 1 shop, right? And they don't integrate it to the Switch 2, or they charge you to be able to transfer your library from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2, because a lot of people don't have a Switch at all. They didn't invest in a Switch. So it's not going to mess over Switch 2 owners. It'll just mess over Switch 1 owners when they stop supporting it, and you lose all your digital purchases. I have 130 digital games. I have Mario Wonder. I have all the main titles. But you really don't own anything, because on the 3DS, the Wii, and the Wii U, you can't re-download your purchases. So what's going to happen when Switch 1 eShop closes down? You can't re-download your $50 purchases. And Nintendo doesn't even want to answer this question. I think it's a valid question, because you took all our money for Virtual Console, and we can't even re-download our purchases, Like I said, I'm only hurt myself if I don't buy Switch 1 games. I waited years for Metroid Prime 4. You really think I'm not going to buy Metroid Prime 4 for the Switch 1 just because I don't want to buy Nintendo's next system? I said I'm boycotting Switch 2, enhanced Switch 2 games, and the game ID cards. I didn't say I'm boycotting Nintendo, because I don't think that's going to make a difference. And the reason why is scalpers. Scalpers weren't prevented completely. So when a scalper gives the money to Nintendo, Nintendo still makes the money. So regardless if you don't buy it and I don't buy it, it's not going to make a difference. That's why boycotting is dumb. No, that's the silly thing. To me, the system, right? I think the system is worth 450. I even said, from the beginning, I said I wanted to get the bundle. I wanted to get the $500 bundle to save $30 on Mario Kart World, right? Not happy. Where are they? Hold on, please. I wanted to get the Mario Kart World, but I was going to save $30 on buying that bundle. I wasn't going to buy the camera. I didn't care about the chat service, right? I didn't want to buy Express SD cards that are going to be more expensive when the Steam Deck can just use regular SD cards. Anyway, I'm mad about the price of the software. The system didn't even bother me. I gladly paid the $500 for the bundle, like I said. But I don't think that it's a good idea to buy $80 games. Yeah, that's my favorite. Here, let me see. The Fruities. I love these things. Tootsie Roll makes Fruities, by the way. Yes, you can have it. Okay, so like I was saying though, right? Basically, if this president, not president, precedent, I think you know what I mean. If we buy games at 80, we should expect they're worth 80. If Nintendo is going to dictate what games are 80 just because they think it's worth it, then that means they took the customer out of the equation. And what's going to happen, people are going to wait till it goes on sale. Well, here's the problem with that theory. When AA companies or even AAA see that people are waiting for prices to go on sale, they're going to take away physical completely. All they'll do is they'll have it available digitally, and then you're either going to buy it or not. And they're not going to discount it at all. Digital games usually stay the price they are forever. I'm not saying all the time, but think about it. So eventually, physical will be phased out completely, and then we'll have only digital. The AA companies, no, I'm sorry, AA developers are going to go out of business because they can't compete with the AAAs, and then we'll only be able to buy AAAs. And I think maybe that's what the game companies want in the long run, because the AAAs make more money anyway. I think that they don't care about being affordable anymore. I think they just care about how much money they can make no matter what. And I understand they're companies. They want to make the most profit, right? Well, you still have to care about your customer, because the only reason why they have billions of dollars is because of us. And they seem to get arrogant and they don't care about the customers anymore. And they're like, we could charge whatever we want. People will buy it. Who cares? I was part of that people. I would complain about prices, but I'd still buy it. I'd complain about Nintendo, but I'd still buy it. No more. I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do it anymore, because I see it's hurting the video game industry. These rich people that have extra income that other people don't have, you shouldn't look down on them. Some people can't control about their life situations, and some people are poor. But there's also people that are cheap too. It seems like these, people forgot about people being cheap. I'm sorry, hold on a second. If the price is a big deal, don't buy it. I'm still part of the people, except I didn't really complain. Well, here's the thing. That's another thing. I don't hate anyone that wants to switch to. I don't blame them, because guess what? I'm a loyal customer. I just told you I have 10 switches in the house. I'm not saying I have 10 switches. Everybody's like, why do you even have that many? I have the version 1 day 1 switch. I have 2 version 2 switches. I have 2 OLEDs, and I have 5 switch lights. That's 10. But my point is, right? We've waited so many years for the Switch 2 Pro, whatever, the Switch Pro, that's what it was called in the beginning. And now we see it Switch 2. So I don't blame Nintendo gamers wanting to have better performance for games that should have had better performance anyway. But the thing I don't understand, Nintendo shouldn't be able to charge us for any upgrades to upgrade the Switch 1 games to get the Switch 2 performance. It's almost like you're getting punished. It's not going to affect the new family. The new family is going to be like, oh, well, I have to do this because I decided to buy the Switch 2. No, it's only going to affect the people that had the Switch 1 that just want better frame rates and higher fidelity, right? I believe all upgrades should be free. All. I don't think we should be charged extra to take our Switch 1 game that we bought 8 years ago and then $10 extra that we paid $70 for. I don't think that's right at all. And I think that just shows you how greedy Nintendo really is. But like I said, I'm not hating on anyone. If you want the Switch 2, that's cool. I'm trying to tell you that, the Switch 2 and the Steam Deck, the prices aren't that different. You can get an LCD 256 gigs, right? I realize the screen isn't as big as the Switch 2, and it's I think 40 hertz refresh rate or something like that. I'd have to do my research. I don't know. I have the OLED. That was another thing everybody's mad about. No OLED Switch 2. Well, I can understand that. You're complaining about the price now. What do you think the OLED would have cost? It has 120 frame rates per second. It has DLSSR or whatever. 4K. They're doing something to have it 4K. It's not really 4K. But my point is, of course it's going to cost more. And then if they came out with the OLED Switch 2 right off the bat, you wouldn't have complained how much more it was? How does that make any sense? But my point is, anyone that says I'm poor, I paid $650 for my OLED Steam Deck that's 1 terabyte NVMe that uses regular SD cards. The Switch 2 only uses Express SD cards. And Express SD cards are more expensive. So that just puts even more price on working class or paycheck to paycheck families. Like I said, I was honest about the Steam Deck, right? Yes, it's all digital. I get it. But the thing you're not realizing is the games aren't $80 each, right? Sometimes, if you are patient, you can get a game for $7.50. Yes, I know it's older. It's not the newest game. My point is, there is no games that are $7.50 ever from Nintendo. Ever. And let's talk about the discount. People were talking about drop the price of the Switch 2. Why in the world would you think that Nintendo is going to drop the price of the Switch 2 when they didn't even have the decency to drop the Switch price 1? There was a difference from the day 1 Switch and a version 2 Switch, but it wasn't a price difference. They never dropped the first Switch that had terrible battery life, right? They could have easily dropped the price of the first Switch to see, the customer would be like, why is this cheaper than the other one? Aren't they the same thing? Because they're not the same thing. That's why. And then the OLED, it was very expensive, right? Because the screen, when it's docked, it doesn't matter if it's OLED. If I wanted a Switch Lite OLED, then I would have bought that. But Nintendo didn't even give you that. Why wasn't there an OLED Switch Lite for a little bit more? If I bought the OLED, you're assuming that I only want to play it handheld. What if OLED's the only Switch you have in the house? You're going to have it docked. So the OLED screen made no difference. And then the thing that made me really mad about the Switch OLED, it was not a hardware upgrade. If it was a hardware upgrade and a screen upgrade, I can understand it being $350. In my opinion, the best Switch value is Switch version 2. You could at least dock it, right? The Switch 2 is the same hardware as the OLED. Well, no, Nintendo is doing something about scalpers. At least eBay, right? eBay is taking down the posts. What's that word? I I can't think of the word. It's not compliment. I can't think of the word. Basically, I'm saying good job on you, eBay. I can't think of the word right now. I'm sorry. Um, and Nintendo is also doing an email to the gamers that have, I think, 50 hours gameplay. And I'll give Nintendo credit. That's nice too. That means that you're giving, your loyal customers a chance to pre-order the Switch 2 more than other people that are going to try and pre-order the Switch 2 and it'll get sold out. People still going to use bots. Yep. Yep. People use bots all the time. Absolutely. Yes, yes. I said last Christmas I finally got a PS5. I've never had a PS5. Um, and it's all because of scalpers. I'm not a fan of scalpers at all. Not at all. Um, and I think it's kind of sad, in defense of Nintendo, at least this time they're trying to have as many units possible for Switch 2 instead of, the pandemic and the Switch 1, was really hard to get. You go to 30 different stores and you couldn't get a Switch 1. It makes you wonder, do these people realize how hard it was to get a Switch 1 when it first came out? I had to wait 4 a.m. out at Target just to get my Switch 1 day one edition. And you know what? I don't regret it at all. I love the Switch. I love the Switch. I think that the Switch has an awesome game library. I think that the Switch game library is a really good game library. The only thing I had a problem with the Switch was the performance. Monster Hunter Stories would go from 30 frame rates per second to 25 in certain areas. And you know about Zelda. So why would we have to pay to upgrade the performance of a game we bought 8 years ago? I don't think that's right, Nintendo. I don't think you should do that. It's bad enough these families that never had a Switch aren't going to even understand the expansion pass and realize that they're not going to be able to play Game Boy Advance N64 or the GameCube that you just added. Then you paywall the GameCube controller. Then you make, supposedly, I'll say supposedly, you made the GameCube controller work only on the GameCube NSO. Every other controller you released works on the system normal. Why the GameCube controller not working on, anything other than the GameCube emulator? Because that's what it is. It's an emulator. But it's not just Nintendo. I made it very clear. I don't care about the PS6. I don't care about the next Xbox. This is what you're not getting. I told you, I'm a gamer. I bought the Xbox, right? The Xbox One. I bought the Xbox One X. I bought the Xbox Series X. The only one I didn't get is the Xbox Series S, which I'm actually impressed with the S if it has an optical disc drive, which is pretty cool. It's a powerhouse. But my point is, I have such a huge backlog of every game system I own under the sun, right? But I keep buying games and I don't play them. I still haven't played Bayonetta 3. I'm sorry, wait a second. Will Switch 1 Pro controller work on? No. Mm-mm. Nope, you have to buy a Pro controller that's only for Switch 2. I wish. Oh, and let's talk about that. The Joy-Cons, right? The pair of Joy-Cons are $90, right? They say that they did this magical thing and rebuilt the controller, right? I think that the stick drift exists on the Switch too. Because here's the thing. The Pro controller on the Switch 1 was awesome. And it was because the Joy-Cons were trash. So any veteran gamer is going to buy the Switch 2 Pro controller because they're not going to trust the Joy-Cons that, come with the Switch 2. Or at least I wouldn't. I don't trust them. Did you know the Switch dock by itself is $110 just because of 4K? Oh, and another thing, the chargers for the Switch 1 don't work on the Switch 2. I think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's just a charger. So how different is the Switch 2 power from the Switch 1? I got like 5, Switch 1 chargers because I told you I had 10 Switches. But anyway, you have to buy an extra charger, which is $30 for the Switch 2. But yet, a USB-C can charge the Joy-Cons like normal on a Joy-Con charger. So why can't I use a Switch 1 charger to charge the Switch 2? That doesn't make sense to me. So now basically what you're telling me is, say your kid accidentally misplaces your Switch 2 charger, you you can't even charge your system. Even better, if the Switch 2 charger gets misplaced, you can't even use your dock. That's absolute insanity to me. But I told you, I'm not buying the Switch 2. I don't care. I'm not even going to get upset about what games are on it and what games aren't on it because Nintendo messed up big time. This is what they don't get. It's not Nintendo only games anymore. People from Xbox and PS5 are going to have Borderlands 4. They're going to have Cyberpunk. I mean, they've had Cyberpunk. And then they're going to compare. And they're going to say, well, the Switch 2 is new, so of course it's going to be the better performance of the competition. And if it's not, you're going to lose customers, Nintendo, and you deserve it. You deserve it. Yeah, I know. Well, think about it. The Switch 2 Pro controller, right? Do you remember the Wii U had its own Pro controller? You can't connect the Wii U Pro controller to anything else. That's one thing that I didn't understand about the Wii U. And I don't understand about PlayStation either. Let me tell you, ready? You would assume if you got a PlayStation Portal, right, that it's a controller. So, hypothetically, if I had 2 PlayStation Portals, it should just be 2 controllers, right? It doesn't register. Well, the Wii U, you would assume if you had 2 Wii U gamepads that it's just a controller. Nope. Only one Wii U gamepad worked. Why is that? Is that some kind of limitation for these systems on these companies? Or did they purposely do that so that you had to get more controllers? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Bye. God bless.